Going live. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Yari Dudenko, and I have here Scott with Next Generation. We're going to be providing some value today. Again, greatly appreciate it for your time on the Saturday, on the day off, on a beautiful, beautiful day today it is. You guys are tuning in to. We're just going to wait a few minutes to have more people come in, join us. So Scott, tell me about yourself. Who is Scott, and how did you come across, the path that you're on right now? Where did you start? A lot of times people have a great story where they're, you end up one way, but then the universe provides you, and you start something else. So tell us about yourself, Scott.
Well, good morning, Eric, and thank you for having us, for having me and Next Generation. I actually, what Next Generation is, we're a custodian for self-directed IRAs and primarily work in the alternative asset market. My story is not that exciting that I got here, but I was on the more traditional side of investing, mutual funds, ETFs, things like that. I wasn't even that familiar with the alternative asset universe. So for me, when I found out about it and came on board, it was really exciting because it's a very small segment of the population, but all the IRA information is guided by the same principles of traditional IRAs. So essentially what self-directed IRAs are all about is they allow you to make your investments, you to make the choices versus, a custodian like a UBS, a Fidelity, et cetera. So I enjoy it because it gives more freedom to the people who are actually doing the investing.
Okay. So what is your role in all of this? Meaning, what is your role with Next Generation?
Well, I'm a business development representative. So basically what we do is we kind of do events like this, which obviously have been somewhat muted because of the whole COVID crisis, but a lot of networking, a lot of relationship building. We deal with a lot of people who like to invest in things other than traditional assets.
Makes sense. Okay. And so is majority of your clientele is in real estate, or what type of industries do you guys cover?
Yes. Primarily, the biggest segment is real estate. However, money lending and private equity are growing. Also, you have the ability to invest in precious metals. So there's many things you can invest in using alternative assets. Things you can invest in are like life insurance, collectibles, things like that. But for the most part, the alternative universe of investing is pretty vast.
Makes sense. Got you, Scott. Now, I know you're going to have a presentation and you're going to go into it in a few minutes, telling people more about it. I don't know if you covered in your presentation, but do talk more about what exactly is, for the newbies and people who want to get into this, right? They don't really understand how this works, or, they are doing the traditional way, right? So how do they move over to, the next generation and the next way of investing?
That's a great question. Well, essentially, as a custodian, all we are is the so-called middle person, to be politically correct. You come to us, you have your assets, and you want to be self-directing. You just open an application. We do DocuSign, we do PDF versions. We can mail them to you. We get the application open, and once the application is processed, we transfer your assets over to us. We hold your assets. And then you direct our transaction team to make the investments you want to make. That's the simple version. That's the high overview version. I mean, there's a little more intricacies involved with other sort of investments, but that's the simple way.
Makes sense. So when you say you're a middleman, you're pretty much making sure that people don't get fined, right? Because
Exactly. The biggest thing about the self-directed IRA, what's called a prohibited transaction, which I'll address in my presentation, and that allows it allows the IRS to distribute your assets, which becomes a taxable consequence. And depending on the assets in your IRA, that could be not a good thing. So
okay,
we want to avoid prohibited transactions.
And what kind of penalties are we looking at that could be possibly?
Well, it depends on your age, because like I said, with the IRAs, if you're 59 and a half or older, you're just paying whatever the tax penalty is. But if you're younger, you're paying IRS penalties for it, because it would be, even though they're distributing your assets, they're counting it as early withdrawal. So then you're paying 10% and then an additional 20% on that. So it's not really a good idea. And that's our role, is to educate the participants so they don't engage in prohibited transactions.
Makes sense. Okay, got it. So you go from A to Z, explaining exactly what needs to be done and how to avoid getting punished.
Yeah,
If okay, got it. So tell us more about yourself. So you, as you were telling me prior, you have two boys, and you've been working from home. COVID has been something of a difference. I myself have a background in marketing, e-commerce, and so forth. So I kind of been working from home for a long period of time. And COVID, it made me more work from home. And now I'm in real estate, and it's making me more be out there. But for a lot of people who worked from in an office most of their lifetime, or the previous years, it's been definitely a different scenario, different point of view of life. And you yourself have been working from home because it's mandatory for you. So how has that been working out for you? How's COVID treating you, and where do you see things going forward?
Well, working from home is a challenge, like I had said, only because it's all the time. When I was in the office and I had the ability to work from home on occasion, it was a nice kind of change of pace. I was able to get things done that maybe I wasn't able to get done during the weekend.
Right.
However, now I'm home all the time. My son, who's in high school, is home all the time because it's virtual schooling. My wife was home. Her office shut down because she was in the medical profession, so she was home all the time. So it was an adjustment. We're trying to get back to somewhat of a new normal, but hopefully, who knows when, timetable wise, this spring, this COVID stuff kind of ends. I just got to make sure I keep masks in my car, and wherever I go, I don't forget my mask and those kinds of things. So
yeah, it's part of life.
We'll see what happens.
It's part of life. Yeah. So what about how are you dealing with clients? Is it mostly emails? Like, so for example, if someone were to use your services, can they just do email most of the time, or is it like mostly face to face?
Well, ideally it's up to them. I did have to get permission from my CEO to meet face to face, just because our restrictions were pretty stringent
Right.
when this whole thing broke. We just got to, we're in New Jersey, so we have to abide by the governor's rulings. Some of the networking groups I'm part of have been trying to get back together in terms of face to face meeting, networking. I have yet to attend, but I'm monitoring. I'm seeing what the turnout is. That's really, it's a wait and see approach, kind of.
Yep, I agree with
That's
you.
where we are. But yeah, I'd like to. Ideally, it's phone and email. I'd like to get back, or Zoom is become such a big such a big component of what to do, the way to communicate. But I think I'd like to get back to face meetings. It's just much more interpersonal.
Scott, it seems that you guys are very flexible. You guys are doing exactly what the client would prefer you to do, and then you're providing the value that they would want.
Yeah, that's a good point. And thank you for bringing that up, because really our role is, like I said, to educate. And what we really need to do is we need to get our message out to people. A lot of our business is word of mouth. People who've used us before or used the self-directed, there's groups that advocate for us.
Okay.
Including Nick. When I say advocate, they've used our services and they've discussed it with their followers. And a lot of times that's very beneficial to us.
Okay.
Because word of mouth is a big component of our business growing.
Yes. Yeah. Network is your net worth, I like to say.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you, Scott. So if you want, you can we can start the presentation. You can go into that, and then what we're gonna do, and everybody who's viewing, please do ask questions. We'll get to that at the end. It will answer all your questions that you might have and clear anything up that we might missed, as well as Scott will go through his presentation, some of the information, and then we'll recap, and after that we'll move forward. So Scott, whenever you're ready, let me know to share the screen.
All right, I'm just sharing now. Let me know when you see it.
Okay.
See it yet or no?
I don't see it yet.
Okay.
Once you click on share screen at the bottom.
Yep. All right. So let me just kind of tinker with it a little here.
Awesome. Yeah, and for everyone who's viewing, thank you for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it, guys. And also don't forget, please do ask questions. We strongly recommend asking questions. The reason for that is most likely whatever question you might have, another person has it. So go ahead and ask that question so we can get to it. We can answer it, whatever it could be relating to the topics. And again, self-directed IRAs is definitely something really positive. It gives you control. And when you have a person like Scott with Next Generation, they're able to help you and guide you throughout the process. And the biggest thing I've been seeing is people's worry, right? Am I going to get spanked in a way by IRS and so forth? So how do we avoid that? And but to avoid that, you really need to use people who understand it well, and that's pretty much what the goal is. I haven't seen
It's still not working, huh? It's interesting. I don't know why it's not working.
yeah, just click on share screen and it should give you the options.
No, it says wait, sharing now. Okay, there we go.
Perfect. All right.
All right, you got it now?
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
All right, the microphone is yours.
All right, wonderful. Well, good morning. As you had heard our conversation, my name's Scott. I'm with Next Generation. We are a self-directed IRA company. We're actually a custodian administrator for self-directed IRAs. We're a neutral third party, and our role is to hold accounts, providing tax reporting, record keeping, and documentation for our investors, including education. Let me get my now, we're local professionals with experience and expertise as administrators and record keepers. We're not a bank. We're not a financial planning service or a brokerage house. Now, what we do or what we don't do is we don't review the merits or legitimacy of an investment. We just look to see if it's a copacetic or allowable investment. We don't do the research to make sure if someone comes to us with an LLC or something that they want to invest in, we don't see if it's legal. We just see if it looks like it would meet compliance requirements. We're not a fiduciary as defined in the IRC ERISA code. So this is more of an educational type presentation for you today. Now, Jamie is she is our founder, Jamie Raskulinich, and she is in the business. She was the founder. We founded this back in 2004. 15 years in business as a woman-owned company. Actually, 16 now. We're in 2020. And she is a self-directed IRA user. And as you can see, we were one time the best IRA custodian in America. Now, what is a self-directed IRA? Allows you to invest in non-traditional assets. This came about when ERISA came about back in 1974. So these self-directed IRAs have been allowed since traditional IRAs were allowed. So most people aren't aware of that, but that's the case. You can get a Roth or you can get a traditional IRA. This is an interesting slide. Elderly are foregoing retirement because it used to be you would have your Social Security and then you would retire and you'd have a pension, but pensions don't really exist anymore. And people are living longer in retirement. And there's a situation where a lot of times people are outliving their money. Sorry. Here's the plans that can be self-directed: traditional, Roth, SAP, simple. Employer, solo Ks can be self-directed. Education, also known as Coverdale's, and you can even do an HSA. The options for funding it: you can make a contribution, just like opening a new account. You can transfer the funds, moving the accounts between one custodian to another. A rollover, both indirect and traditional, where you move the funds between unlike accounts, like an old 401k, an old 403b, an old 457. And then you can convert from a traditional to a Roth to save yourself tax consequences down the road. Obviously, that would be something you'd have a conversation with your accountant about. These are all the things you can invest in. And like secured and unsecured notes is right there on that list. Now here's some strategies that you can look at. There's a number of strategies that people can take part in. This method allows for people to utilize their own self-directed IRAs to invest in companies or projects. And that's one of the things that will be addressed today, probably throughout the day. Promissory notes and mortgage loans, that's also another strategy where you can use your IRA to lend money and you can determine the interest rate. And all the money goes back into your IRA. This strategy is a simple strategy. You know, you're familiar with the buy and hold. You can fix and flip. It's relative to real estate. And you can also partner with people using your funds and other people's funds to invest and then earn a return on that. This is what we talked about before, the prohibited transactions. There's 3 types of prohibited transactions: per se, extension of credit, and self-dealing. What's important to know about prohibited transactions are the consequences. The IRA ceases to be an IRA, the funds are distributed, and there's penalties and taxes. It mentioned disqualified persons. A per se transaction, which is the first transaction on here, when an IRA engages in a transaction with a disqualified person. Disqualified persons are ascendants and descendants, you know, mother, father, children, spouse. Then there's also fiduciaries. These are people you cannot do business with using your IRA, or it would become a prohibited transaction. Now, here on the real estate, it's important to know for people who are interested in using their self-directed IRA, it has to be investment purpose only, meaning you cannot buy a vacation house and stay in it half the time. You can never stay in it if you buy it. If you buy it for the purpose of using your IRA, you cannot have your family stay in it. Now, you could probably ask, well, how would they know? If you want to take that chance, that's fine. But if it is somehow found out who stays in your house, then that becomes a prohibited transaction. You can also not do sweat equity, which means you cannot do the repairs on your own property. You must hire an outside vendor to do that. And there's a few other things that are important to know. All right, so capital flow, the way this works is the retirement plan owner makes his investment. The transaction gets processed. The funds flow to the retirement plan. It never goes to you personally. It never goes to the investor personally. The IRA essentially becomes the owner of this. Is that the end of my slideshow? Wow. That's the end of my show. That was quick. Let me just go to this slide. I have one more thing I want to cover.
Yes, please do.
Anybody who's looking at our presentation, if you go to our website for a free white paper download, that'd be great. You get information. You get things monthly sent to you via email. Let me just go back. This is important too, so I apologize. I skipped ahead. The process and timeline for opening an account. Basically, it's 1 to 2 business days, and that's my role. Eric and I were having a conversation. We take an application. It usually takes 1 to 2 days to process, depending on how accurate the information is given to us, the biographical information, the beneficiary information, the transfer information. The ID needs to be verified. That takes about 1 to 2 business days. Once that's open, then funding of the account takes place, which is the longest part of the process. Now, a lot of the people who invest with us have very strong relationships with their current custodians. And one of the when I was addressing the kind of options to move money to us, whether it's a transfer or a rollover, A transfer can be done as a partial transfer. So for people, if they have a lot of money in their IRA, but they don't want to move all their money over, they can just transfer the money they want to invest in a self-directed account. And that's important distinction to make, because some people get concerned. I don't want to move all my money over there out of traditional investment vehicles, because I want to take the opportunity to still be able to invest in the market. So that's why a transfer is a valuable tool. A partial transfer can allow you to do that. But the fund itself, it takes 1 to 6 weeks, depending on the wirehouses and how quickly it comes. It can come to us via wire or ACH. We have a transaction team that kind of works to get this transaction completed, the money moved over to us. And then once the money is moved over to us, then our compliance team reviews the investment, does its due diligence, and wants to make sure that everything's copacetic. And if it turns out to be the case, then we go forward and open your account to allow you to start making your investments. Any questions? I'm going to stop. I'm going to leave my presentation now, and then you'll see me again. All right. Any questions?
All right. So the first question that comes in is pretty much, how do I create a self-directed solo 401k?
A solo 401k. You're going to need because it's it's still considered a 401k. You're going to need a third-party administrator. So you're going to need a plan document. But you need to open up the application with us, and then find your third-party administrator to create your plan document. And then once that's open, then we can start getting it funded.
Makes sense. Now, Scott, what is the difference between self-directed custodian and self-directed administrator?
Well, we kind of do both. The custodian is where we hold the note. That makes us the custodian. The administrator is we do some tax reporting for the benefit of the IRA.
Got it.
And if it needs to get distributed, we handle that distribution.
So if anybody's working with you, Scott, directly, they're getting pretty much both parties, this custodian and the administrator, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So what are some of the things that I know you recap? So we're just pretty much recapping your your slideshow. So what are some of the things that a person should expect from a self-directed IRA custodian? Do you guys get like financial advice?
No. That's a great question. I said we're not a fiduciary. A fiduciary, by definition, is someone who provides financial advice. So we will not, we're not even going to tell you about the merits. If you come to us and say, if you want to buy a piece of property and the piece of property is, dilapidated and you're paying a lot of money for it, we're not going to say you're paying too much for this. We're just kind of, you make the decision. We kind of just move the process along, essentially.
Right. So you kind of a filter, making sure that everything is done, the paperwork is done properly, so there's no issues in moving forward.
Correct.
Got it. So, like, is there an annual evaluation of what is going on in the number side?
Well, we send quarterly reports or annual reports. You make that decision. And then obviously, whenever you have access online to your accounts, you can monitor your accounts. And, then you can obviously, we have dedicated representatives. We're what's considered a boutique agency because we're relatively small. You can call in. Everybody has access to the account information, our small group. And you can call in. You'll find a dedicated representative who will work with you and, give you the information you are looking for.
So pretty much you guys would be making sure that whatever prohibited transactions would pop up, you guys would go over it and explain it.
Well, yeah, that's a very good point. Once the prohibited transaction occurs, the cow's out of the barn, so to speak.
Got it.
Our role is that's why we look at the investment before to see if there's any red flags.
Due diligence, pretty much, period, right?
We do our due diligence, and that's our role as being a custodian. Now, they can still happen. Sometimes if they're inadvertent, there's ways to try to roll it back, so to speak. You got to get an attorney involved because you got to go petition the IRS and say, I want to undo this prohibited transaction.
Got it.
Some people might not even, care. I mean, I don't know why people would not care, but people might not even care. But yes, we do our due diligence in trying to prevent people from engaging in a prohibited transaction.
Got it. So, and you mentioned, once the cat is out of the bag, there is ways of turning it back, saying, hey, I messed up. I understand. I'm aware of it. I'd love to, point it out and get it resolved in a proper manner, right? Is that possible?
You can always ask.
Got it.
Like I said, when you're dealing with the IRS, they don't generally engage in favorable activity with the population in a whole kind of holistic kind of way. So it's you don't want it to happen. They've reversed them, but you want to avoid going there.
Makes sense, right? That makes sense 100%. That's why you guys are the middleman, the filter, making sure that it gets properly done the first time, so you don't have to go back and redo it, because lawyers do cost money, extra money.
Yes, lawyers do cost money, no question.
Is so, for example, the self-directed IRA custodian administrator, are you guys regulated, and how frequently and by who?
That's a great question. We are not a regulated agency. We are well, we're a trust company. So
what does that really mean, regulated?
Well, in terms of we don't. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. We don't have, like, for instance, if people come invest with a bank, there's FDIC secure. It's secured by FDIC. Some of our money that we receive is backed or insured FDIC, but not everything.
Got it.
And it's dependent on what comes across. But yeah, as a rate, I mean, we're regulated by the IRS and the DOL, Department of Labor. We just have to follow a strict guideline in doing the business we do.
Makes sense. Got it. Okay. So, some of the viewers here are real estate related and focused on. I myself am a real estate investor. And so, just to go over things, like you said before, you guys would not, like an administrator or a custodian would not go through the deal and say, hey, you're paying too much for this property, because that's a whole different aspect. That's pretty much who's investing into it. That's their, their goal. You guys are making sure that the paperwork is filed properly. Now, let's say, small numbers, 100,000, buy property for 50, needs about 50,000 renovation. So you guys would file all the paperwork, meaning, hey, this property is being purchased for this amount. It's getting done. It's the renovation is about $50,000, et cetera, et cetera. Now, going back to, you mentioned the person who has the self-directed IRA, he cannot do the work physically himself, and that has to be done by a third party. Now,
Sure.
that party, besides having a license and insured, need to have requirements to do the work on the house to make sure that everything is up to date and up to code with the the paperwork.
Well, not necessarily. You can use a handyman to do labor on the house. The handyman cannot be your son or your dad or your grandfather. It cannot be someone who's a disqualified person who I address. Generally, ascendants or descendants. It could not be your partner if you partner with somebody. So essentially, the vendor would send the invoice to you, or the investor. The investor would send the invoice to us, and then we would pay the invoice out of the IRA.
Got it. We're kind of like bookkeeping.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a role. But I mean, again, there's some more deeper. There's more. If you extrapolate to all the opportunities, there's a lot to cover. But for the purpose of today, I'm trying to keep it relatively simple.
Makes sense. Got it. Now, so speaking, like, so a person would reach out to you and say, the draw has to be done, or whatnot. Money has to be deposited. Now, are there fees? How does this, like, I know like every transaction, I guess, would be different, but is there like standard fees when it comes down to?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. We have custodial fees. That's kind of one of the ways we make our money. And there are two styles. We have a value-based fee and we have a flat rate fee.
Mm-hmm.
The value-based fee is billed on a quarterly basis. Flat rate fee is billed annually. The difference is the amount of assets we've brought over or have had deposited with us. Meaning, if you deposit $30,000 or less, the value-based fee schedule would be more cost-effective for you. If you deposit more than $30,000, it would be more cost-effective to do the annual rate, because you're paying overall less than you would on a quarterly basis.
Got it. Okay.
And then you do pay fees for, transaction fees, like I said, for if you're paying vendors, there's a charge to cut a check to a vendor and things like that. There's additional like a la carte type fees, but they're all spelled out in the application kit we send to people. We're very transparent in our fees, so there's no like hidden charges.
Got it. So everything will be disclosed prior.
Absolutely.
Is there like a list of fees that people come into, like, let's say, your website or so forth? And
yeah, I believe there's if you go to our website, there are fees. Our fee schedule should be on our website. If it is not, at the beginning of my slide, and we can even post it, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to send you our fee schedule.
Awesome. And what type of accounts do you guys offer available, or what type of accounts are there?
Well, there's the traditional account, the Roth account. Those are our two most prominent accounts. Yeah, they're the most. Yes. We do someone had just asked about a solo 401k. We do a solo 401k. We do a Coverdale, which is an education account for children. So we do a SEP account, which is simplified employee pension for people who work by themselves. A lot of real estate people use SEP accounts. So we give a lot of choices for self-directing a retirement plan. It's just, do we have the right choice for you? That's what it comes down to.
So let's briefly speak about, for a person who is, let's say, is getting a W-2, he gets paid a salary. What would you recommend for him to use or start or open up? He wants to contribute it to.
Well, it depends if he's his own company. Like if he's getting a W-2 and he's an employee of a bigger company, yep, and they're giving him a retirement plan, he can open a retirement plan with us, but he can't open a traditional IRA. It's just going to be managed by the guidelines of the IRS, depending on his age. Like contributions like $6,500 a year.
Got it. Okay.
And there's a step-up provision if you're over 50.
So we do have a question from Daniel Hugh. Good morning, Daniel. Why choose Next Generation over other SDIRA custodians?
Well, there's a lot of reasons to choose us. One is, like I said, we're a boutique agency, so we're smaller. So you're going to get dedicated service. You're going to have a human being, where when you call in, you're going to talk to someone who's live, who's familiar with your account. Depending on where Daniel's watching from, if he's local, we are in New Jersey, there's not a lot of custodians in this area. I think there's one in.
You broke up, Scott?
I'm sorry. There's one in Pennsylvania. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a lot of custodians. There's a handful in Texas, a handful on the West Coast, but if he's in New Jersey, we're one of the only ones in this area. So from a commonality point of view, and we've been in business, so we know what we're doing. We've been in business 20 years.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. God, thank you for the information. Now, what type of assets will you provide custody services?
In terms of what?
So really, you mentioned before, real estate is one. A person could buy like gold. Is that correct? And so
precious metals. Yes. Okay. So you can do precious metals. The alternative asset universe is vast. So precious metals, real estate. You can do distressed notes, promissory notes, mortgage notes, tax liens, hard money lending, and you can do there's so many opportunities to use your self-directed IRA for investment purposes. You can invest in cryptocurrency if you like. There's a lot of opportunity.
So it's pretty much taking. So you have control fully of your money. It's just whatever profits you get, it goes back into the account. You cannot use it to buy yourself goods or services for personal use.
Correct. The money, the IRA essentially becomes your bank, your personal bank. So if just say, for argument's sake, you're buying a rental property, the rent flows back into your IRA. It doesn't flow back to you. It goes into your IRA. But from another strategy, I guess, if someone's doing a fix and flip, they buy a house, they fix it up, they flip it, they get their purchase, they sell it, the money goes back in the IRA. If they want to transfer back to a traditional custodian to invest in, the traditional markets, you don't lose your IRA status by self-directing. It's just another IRA. The self-direction just means you have more control over it versus someone else making your investment decisions.
Got it. Okay. Now, what about losses? What happens when, let's say, you make a bad move, when the investor, he buys a property that's not, shouldn't have purchased, and he has a loss? What happens then?
Well, it's like an IRA, so your IRA just loses money
Right.
if you do a loss, or you take a loss but don't sell out, meaning you don't your IRA is intact. It's it's an unrealized loss, and you can invest and maybe get that money back. It's just like having a loss in the stock market. Like if the value of your account goes down, it goes down. If you have an opportunity to invest or to sell out and buy more stocks, as long as you don't take distribution. If you take distribution, then the loss is just a realized loss, and then that's something you want to deal with your accountant. If you
Got it.
sell it, if you buy it for 100,000, you sell it for 60,000, you lost 40 grand, and now the value of your account is now $60,000.
Makes sense. Okay, makes sense. Right. So there was no penalties. It's just pretty much part of,
Yeah, there's no penalty for losing money.
it makes sense. For example, one time somebody gave me an example that, let's say you do get self-directed IRA, and you have a debit card that you're using to purchase goods to renovate the house, and you go to a restaurant and you mistakenly swipe your debit card for the self-directed IRA on a personal dinner with your wife, and that's something that would be penalized. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, it's a severe penalty. Like if it's a prohibited transaction, you would need to get a lawyer involved, to write a opinion letter to the IRS to kind of illustrate a mistake was made. It was not intentional, and you're at the mercy of the IRS determining whether or not they're going to accept it. If they don't accept it, they're going to distribute the IRA, and it would be like, wow, I had a $50 dinner, and it cost me $500,000 in tax penalties, which is not a good thing.
Very expensive dinner.
Be one hell of a burger.
Yeah, I agree with you. Is there anything else that you would like to share or mention? Or, for example, I'd love, if you have any kind of an example from prior clients, no names given, but something that would happen, and a penalty that was given to them, or amount, just to give an example of what, worst case scenario, or and then we'll go into, best case scenario of the services.
Well, I'll use real estate. Someone bought a house for a real estate investment, and they let their child live in the house. And whether it doesn't even matter if they let the kid live rent free or they charged them highest rent possible. You're not allowed. It's a prohibited transaction because their child's a disqualified person. It's a distribution of your assets. So the tax penalty is whatever the value of that house is. It becomes, and the reason why that's important to kind of impress upon people, if it's a $500,000, if you're 40 years old and you have a $500,000 IRA, which means for the most part you're pretty smart to get to $500,000 at that age, but now that's distributed. So that year, when you're 40, whatever you made, you're making $500,000 more. So your taxable consequence, you're probably way up there. You're paying a 10% penalty on that, so you're already losing 50 grand, and then there's a 20 to 25% tax penalty on top of that. Is it worth it? So that's why we do our diligence back to the beginning of the prohibited transaction. We want to make sure that people don't engage in those.
Right. So people need to be transparent with yourself, and services like yours, to make sure that you're kind of like a lawyer. You can everything you want, and you say, hey, this is okay, this is not okay, and you shouldn't do this.
Right.
Advice.
We're like a parent. We're like a parent to a child. You can do this, you can't do that. If you do that, you're punished. But the IRS is the one handing out the punishment. You had asked about a good thing. A good thing would be just like maybe flipping a house. You purchase a house, you fix it up, you flip it, you put 150 into it, you flip it for 250. In a year, you made $100,000. That was the $100,000 gain that goes into your IRA. Then you can choose to fix and flip again, or you can move it to traditional markets with your, because the market's not going to give you that kind of gain in 1 year. So that's one of the positives of doing it.
Right. And having full control is definitely something.
Absolutely.
Yes. We do have another question. This question is, if you have a W-2 job that has a 403B and you own a real estate investment company, can you also set up a SEP, SEP, for the real estate company?
That's a question for the accountant. You may be able to, if depending on the amount of money that's being earned in the real estate business. But we're not a fiduciary, so we have a SEP account. We work with realtors, and because realtors are generally 1099, they're their own business, like independent contractors. They can do a SEP account, but in terms of whether you have an existing account with your primary employer, it's a question better suited for an accountant or a tax attorney.
Got it. So you guys don't eliminate the accountant part. You still have to have an accountant. He goes over the numbers. Do you guys talk to the accountants directly, or is it just some kind of like, I'll come to you, you give me the data?
No, we don't. I mean, if we have relationships with accountants who are referrals, but we don't generally talk to accountants about our participants' accounts. Like I said, if there's any questions, we want to make sure that they're being addressed by the proper financial advisor.
Okay. Another question is, what procedures does your company have in place if an investment is suspected to be fraudulent?
What procedures?
Yeah.
Well, we try, obviously, if we have to distribute the account, we distribute the account. We have a team of attorneys. If we get subpoenaed or anything like that, we'll respond in kind. We do our best to avoid those things happening. And then if they become, then we request that they remove the asset from our books.
Got it.
So like we've had, if we have an investor who turns out to be, doing things illegal, we would ask them to remove their assets from our company.
Got it. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. You want to make sure you protect yourself as well as your other investors and your clients. So yeah, that definitely.
And to the point, we're very transparent with, we want to make sure everybody understands everything coming in, so they understand if they have to be going out too.
So on that note, so pretty much, just I open up an account with you guys, right? Is that how that works? And you get, so is my account insured? What type of insurance provided and how much coverage does it have?
Like I said, depending on the cash you move, up to a certain extent, the cash is insured through the FDIC.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an in-kind asset, like it's a piece of paper or a note or something, it's only insured by whatever the investment is.
Got it.
So we don't have. We don't have like FDIC insurance, et cetera, except for those certain amount of cash, because we do work with banks, and that's a guideline. Yeah.
So what is the average turnaround time for opening up an account? How does it so let's say, I'm a newbie, have no zero information on any of this. I learned about it. Somebody told me about it. I want to, I reach out to you, Scott, and I say, hey, I want to do this. How does this work? What would be the next steps, and what would be the time for that?
Anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a 3-step process. We get the application in. It needs to get approved and submitted, usually up to 2 business days. Then the longest part of the process is getting the money or the asset moved over from the other custodian. So that takes the longest time, but it's usually 2 to 6 weeks.
2 to 6 weeks. Got it. So once the process is done, an account is get opened up, is that correct?
Yes. So the account gets open, and then the money gets moved over, and then we're directed by our new client on what to invest in on their behalf.
Got it. Okay, makes sense. And we have another question. Do we get a checkbook and or a debit card with the self-directed IRA?
Well, there's a couple times. We didn't get into all of them. Like I said, there's something called an IRA LLC, which is also known as the checkbook LLC, and we require you get an ERISA attorney for that, but that would come with a checking account and or a bank, a debit card. But the important understanding of an IRA LLC, besides getting an ERISA attorney to administer it for you, it's the onus now shifts to that person. Like all the record keeping in terms of transacting, because they have the checking account, is on them. So they have to be meticulous in tracking their expenses.
Right. So you guys would be less of a filter because you're not really tracking what they're doing.
Right. It's more on them. Like if they might come to us and say, oh, what do? I just wrote a check to Home Depot out of my personal account, I'm going to reimburse, no, you can't do that.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, the follow-up question was turnaround time for funding a real estate purchase in a self-directed IRA. So meaning, what is the average turnaround time for investing in a new asset?
Well, the thing is, in real estate, it's what, hurry up and wait. You gotta know. It's like I said, it's 2 to 6 weeks. If you have the asset in mind, then it depends on in working with whoever you're purchasing or selling to. That impacts the timeline. So if you're interested in investing in real estate, if you have like zero idea and you have nothing in mind, then you have somewhat of a lag time, and that's okay. But if you have something that you might even think 2 months down the road is something, you start moving quickly on opening your account. So when you are ready to make the purchase, everything's in place to just call and say, all right, let's do this, instead of saying, has my money come across yet, and things like that, because that can hold up the process.
Got it. So, so speaking of that, how can a person access their account, right? Access to see what the money went through. Do you guys have is there like a panel, an admin panel, or is it most like just a phone call and
get? They have access. They have an online access to their account, and they can call in. Like I said, we have dedicated representatives who are familiar with their account, and they'd be able to answer those questions.
Got it. Okay, so it makes sense. So everything online, you can access and see what the balance is, and move forward from there. Now, let's say the application was filled out, it was approved, all the steps pre-approval, the account was opened up. Now the money is funded into the account, right? It's already clear and ready to be invested. I go on the contract and I have to close within 30 days. I submit the paperwork to you guys, right? The contract. You guys look over it. You look at the amount has to be deposited, and then you guys transfer the amount to the title company for them to distribute the funds.
Right.
Okay.
We'd issue the buy order. You'd tell us to go ahead and do the buy order. Like our transaction team is dedicated working with you through the entire process. They've done a lot of these transactions, and they'd be very helpful, and they'll let you know ahead of time what your timeline is, so you know what you're working with.
Okay. So again, you guys don't provide financial advice, but what about education? Is there any kind of education tools that you guys can provide, maybe?
Well, if you go on our website, we have white papers, we have webinars, and you could always call and ask. I'd be happy to answer any questions people have. But our website, and you sign up for our newsletter, because our newsletter that goes out every month gives information about all kinds of alternative investments.
And they can just go on your website, and there's a newsletter section. They'll just put in their email.
Yeah. Yep. There's webinars. You can look at our old webinars. You can look at the white papers. Right. We have fact sheets about certain investments.
Got it. Okay. We have another question coming in right now. Sorry if this was covered already. Realty of getting a non-recourse loan for buy and hold for a solo 401k purchase.
The process for getting a non-recourse loan?
Let me repeat that. So yeah, realty of getting a non-recourse loan for a buy and hold from a solo 401k purchase.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't do non-recourse loans. Like, obviously, a non-recourse loan is a loan you need to get instead of a mortgage, because when you're dealing with investment, you can't get a traditional mortgage. You get a non-recourse loan. We don't deal with non-recourse loans. So that would be a question better suited for a company that does non-recourse loans.
Got it. Makes sense. All right. I mean, I think all the questions have been now answered, and you have provided a great value, a lot of gems, a lot of information for newbies and the guys who are already investing and so forth, and being able to control their money, right? This is the most important thing that I feel that is a lot of people don't understand. And, I know friends and family members who, give their money to others, and they're like, oh, they're just going to invest it in, they're going to play the stock market, and then they realize they lose money and they just get upset. But, at the end of the day, if you have no control of it, you have no control of it. Simple as that. Yeah. So just kind of wrap it up. Looking at your competitors, what would you say you guys are strong points, moving forward, things that you guys are really strong in?
Well, we have the experience. So we've been doing this for a long time. Our team's very strong. I am the newest member of the team, and I've been there just over a year, 14 months. Brittany runs our team. She's been there 4 years. Our transaction team has been in place for almost 10 years. So we have the experience and the know-how to execute your transaction the way you'd like to have it done.
Awesome. It's really a peace of mind to hear that you guys have a standard fees. They're all disclosed. If there's any questions, they can always reach out to anybody. You guys Monday to Friday, on the weekends? How does that work? Like email, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we're a traditional shop Monday to Friday. We monitor emails on the weekend. Feel free to, send an email. If you don't hear back, you'll get it back on Monday.
Right. Yeah.
But we have a web chat feature. So if people go on our website and they want to chat with one of our marketing reps, they could do so. And like I said, the newsletter is a great source of information that would allow you, by signing up to our newsletter, allow you to get information from Next Generation that is pertinent to whatever investments you choose to do.
Awesome, Scott. And one last time, so can you just share your email address or your phone number, whichever best way to connect with you?
Yes, it's Scott R, 2 T's, SCOTTR at nextgenerationtrust.com. And my phone number is 973-533-1880.
Awesome. Great, Scott. Thank you. Greatly appreciated. I think we've answered all the questions. You have provided some great knowledge, information. This is something myself is looking forward to this. And yeah, so I guess I'll reach out to you, and anybody else who has any questions, please do reach out to Scott. He'll be able to further assist you and get you on your way to a self-directed IRA.
All right, great, Yarix. Thank you so much, and thank Nick. And it was a great morning, and everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Awesome. Thank you. Enjoy your. Take care. Bye-bye.